All right, so the very first article that I'm going to be doing a magazine monologue is going to be from the May-June 2021 Foreign Affairs edition. There we go, edition. I wanted to say episode. These are not TV shows. The May-June 2021 Foreign Affairs edition. The title of this, which I do have some notes here, this is the very first magazine's monologue. As I get better at this, my goal is to have no notes, but I do have notes that I'm going to probably refer to here. But the title of this article is The Singular Chancellor. It was by Constanze Steltzenmüller, who is the Fritz Stern Chair on Germany and Transatlantic Relations, as well as a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution. If you're not familiar with the Brookings Institution, they do a lot with public policy in the area of foreign policy and economics. I know them mostly through those. They most likely have other areas of expertise, but they're a public policy, non-partisan, non-governmental organization. So the Singular Chancellor is an article about Angela Merkel in Germany. So if you don't know who she is the long-running Chancellor of Germany, the second longest running Chancellor actually in German history, the first woman and the first East German to be elected Chancellor. She took the chancellorship, I believe, in 2005, and it's been 4 terms. Yep, okay, so she is finishing her 4th term, and she spent about a decade on the Forbes. Forbes is another magazine, actually, that I have subscribed to, but she spent about a decade on the Forbes she's been the most powerful woman in the Forbes list for a decade. That's what I'm trying to say here. What else do we got here? So, some more history on her is she was a quantum chemist. When the wall fell. She was about 35 years old, I believe. She was in no way involved in politics. She joined the Christian Democratic Union, which is a political party in Germany. I don't know a lot about them. Admittedly, my political party knowledge outside of the U.S. is weak. I'm hoping that through magazines it will get a little bit better, but part of the CDU. That's one of the ones that I know a little bit about just because it's famous because of her. And shortly after joining the CDU, she was appointed to be the Minister of Women and Youth they use a parliamentary system, so it's a little bit different than the US, but basically, if you're unfamiliar with how ministers are, think of like a secretary in the US cabinet system, very similar. So she was the Minister of Women and Youth. Then after that, she was the Minister of the Environment. I believe it was in 2000. I actually don't think that I noted this. Yes, but I believe in 2000, or roughly 2000, there was a scandal involving the then Chancellor, who she wrote a scathing editorial piece in a German newspaper that essentially forced him to step down. And over the next 6 years, I believe, so it would have been 99. She took the chancellorship in 2005. So over the next 6 years, she solidified her place in the party, the CDU party, and eventually rose to the chancellorship in 2005. She is, as far as the industrialized nations, the essay that I read mentioned that she is the longest running leader of a nation except for Vladimir Putin. He is the only one, I guess, who is longer than her. She has weathered the 2008 financial crisis, the Eurozone crisis that very shortly followed that, the refugee crisis in Europe, Mediterranean, North Africa, COVID, obviously, and then the Russia's annexation of Crimea and then the other invasions in Ukraine. She's had to balance relationships with China, Russia, and the US, which in the last few years have grown strained with all of them. You had the Navalny attempted assassination with the chemical agent. That has strained relations between Berlin and Moscow. Relationships between Beijing and Berlin have also become strained for a whole list of reasons. The treatment of the Uyghur, the warlike rhetoric involving Taiwan, other things such as that. And then the last few years with the U.S. as well, because with the Trump administration, where President Trump or ex-President Trump, whichever way ex-presidents get referred to officially, was pretty outwardly hostile to the EU, Germany, and Angela Merkel herself. So with that said, Germany historically has had to balance, mostly had to balance between Russia or Soviet Union before the collapse and the United States. China's now entered the mix, and it has not been an easy road for her. Why do I bring this all up is because at the very beginning of the article, there were some questions that were asked. What was Merkel's recipe for power? Has she made Germany, its neighbors, and its allies better off? And has she prepared her country for the future? These were questions posed by the author. I'll be honest, those last two had very unclear answers. It is unclear, according to the essay, if Merkel has made Germany, its neighbors, and its allies better off. It's also unclear if she has prepared them at all for the future. What would happen is the article would bring in a positive and follow it up with a negative. And they were like almost perfectly even. So it's unclear from the author's perspective Merkel succeeded in those. As far as her recipe for power, it boils down basically to technocratic, and Merkel has a phenomenal ability to remember details from technical memos or minister meetings or things like that. Where was I before this? Yes. So because she's very technocratic, she regularly had issues? No, there's a word. She regularly... I can't think of it now, but she regularly has polls done just to gauge public opinion on almost everything. And she makes a lot of her decisions based off of that, which no surprise, a lot of politicians do that. But according to the essay, Merkel does it more than almost anybody. The essay pointed out that there are 2 times that Merkel has kind of gone up against these public polls. Number 1 was keeping Greece in the Eurozone. The German public did not want to bail out Greece or other countries at all during the whole Eurozone crisis. And then the other one was the refugee crisis grew to be pretty unpopular in Germany, but Merkel, according to the essay, Merkel stuck by her guns, and it had a lot to do with, I guess Merkel's a very strong Lutheran, and she saw it as like a moral obligation to accept refugees and assist them, and she stood her ground on that even though the public was moving against her. The refugee crisis actually ended up fueling the Alternative for Germany, I believe it's called the Alternative for Germany Party, which is a far-right party in Germany, and through the refugee crisis they entered parliament and gained a lot more power than they had before the refugee crisis. The article basically ended, though, by saying that Germany's friends and neighbors are all kind of worried about Merkel stepping down in September. Which, fun fact, Merkel, I guess, is the first German leader to give up power voluntarily. Everyone else has essentially resigned. Everyone else being, since Germany's had chancellors, has just resigned. The neighbors and allies are worried, though, because it's not clear who the next chancellor will be. Is it possible that it's going to be someone on the more far right end of the spectrum? It is. Is it possible that it's going to be someone who comes from the Green Party, which I don't think is identical to the Green Party in the US, but I think that they are both more left-leaning. If you... US politics, left-right, I'm aware that's a different spectrum in other countries, but... so it could be a further left, could be more centered, could be further right. In essence, the essay kind of ended by saying that nobody really knows, and that is a worry for many people, and it's unclear if Merkel has set Germany up to succeed regardless of the next chancellor. So this was the first magazine monologue. If you have any thoughts or comments about the structure or form, please let me know. I am aware that at different times I would rabbit trail or go off and diverge, and that is another thing I'm going to work on with these videos, is I'm going to try not to do that. But these videos are going to be one takes. So they're not going to be edited. I'm not going to do them more than once. It is what it is, and the goal is to just get better over time. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I'll see you next time.